Hi, everyone. It's Renee Cormier from the Fractional Referral Network. Today, we're talking about mastering the sales conversation. And we have Fractional VP of Sales, Alison White, with us. Alison's had over 25 years as a sales leader. And if anyone can sell, she certainly can. And she's somebody you need to take some advice from. I think we all could. Alison's been working with small to mid-sized businesses, particularly manufacturers in the packaging industry. But sales is sales, and so whether you're selling your fractional services or selling a widget, it really doesn't matter. The principles are always the same. So with that, I will let Alison just take over. So you go ahead, Alison. Thanks so much for doing this with us.
Thanks a lot, Renee. And thanks everyone for joining and showing up. I really appreciate it. I have a presentation on the screen you see. And as I go through it, honestly, I really just want this to be kind of interactive. So even though there's a presentation, if you have a question or you want to add anything, please go ahead and just put your hand up or interrupt me. I'm fine with being interrupted. Today we're going to talk about mastering the sales conversation and opening strong and also overcoming objections. So really the purpose of today is to strengthen our ability to open conversations and handle objections. As fractional leaders, we're often brought in to solve problems really quickly. And, but we first have to be invited into the conversation. So it's really important to establish your credibility right off the bat. And that's what we're going to talk about. It takes skill. So this is all about helping you to do that with more confidence and more clarity. I'll just start with a quick story. A few years ago, I was shadowing a sales rep at a first meeting with a potential customer. And before the prospect even sat down, the rep had launched into a 10-minute monologue of, products and features and benefits and company history. No questions, didn't ask any questions, no rapport building, just a one-way kind of info dump on the prospect. And when we walked out, he said to me, "That went great, don't you think?" And I said, "Well, what do you think that the customer needs?" And he really didn't know how to answer me. And so I think we've all been there where, we're new or whether we're new or whether we're seasoned, really, it's easy to get caught in pitch mode, right? We start pitching, especially when we deeply care about our service or our products and what we offer. But the truth is, the best conversations don't start with a pitch, and they start with a pause, a question, and a moment of genuine connection. So here we're going to help you open stronger, connect faster, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of this, and I hope that I can help you. So we'll start by opening the conversation, setting the stage. We're going to set the stage, which is really about creating the conditions for trust and for clarity. And then we're going to lead with insight and not your resume, not your LinkedIn profile. And then we're going to handle objections. We're going to shift from defense to dialogue. And I've listed 3 objections that I think as fractionals we can all kind of relate to, and we can talk through that. So that's my goal, is to hopefully equip you with some tools and that you can start using immediately and maybe shift your mindset a little bit. Okay. All right, so the first 5 minutes matter. And the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And it's so true. We have to establish a connection. We have to demonstrate our value. And think about the last time someone opened a conversation with you in a way that immediately made you want to lean in to the conversation. And that's what we're going for. We're going for connection. We're going for relevance or credibility, and we're going for trust. We want them to trust us right off the bat within the first 5 minutes. Actually, I would even say within the first 2 minutes, you want to do that. I'll tell you, a few months ago, I was on a call with a potential partner. And honestly, I wasn't sure if the conversation would go anywhere. It was one of those, back-to-back days, and I wasn't really focused on the conversation. But then she came at me with this. She said, "Alison, I've been following your work on helping manufacturers grow through strategic sales leadership. And one thing that stood out to me is how you talk about being a sales detective. And that approach really resonated with me. And I think it's exactly what's missing in my business right now." And as soon as she said that, I leaned in. I dropped everything else. I focused on nothing else but that conversation, because she led with relevance. She told me how important my work was to her and how she thought it would connect with her business. And she understood what I care about. And she connected that to her reason for reaching out. So it's just an example of, leaning into a conversation, and it opened the door. The next thing I want to talk about is research-driven openers. This is another way to really get the attention of your prospect. Show me you know me. If you don't know who Samantha McKenna is, Sam Sales, follow her on LinkedIn. She has great tips for sales, any type of sales. Show me you know me is her tagline, and it really speaks to, when it speaks to doing your homework. You need to signal to your prospect that they matter enough, that you have researched the heck out of them, right? And it's respectful, and it's also rare. Not a lot of people do it. When you show a prospect that you really, really know them, and you go deep into the research, and I'm talking not just their website. I mean, you go deep. You go into their LinkedIn profile, the company profile, look at the people. Who are the people? Look at what they're posting. What are they posting? What's important to them? How do they want to position themselves? How do they want to be, heard personally? What are their values? What's important to them? And that's where you are going to, when you talk to a prospect and you show them how much you know about them, it's hard for them to ignore your conversation. They're going to lean in, and they're going to listen to what you have to say, right? When we do that, we need to frame the purpose of our call as well. We need to let them know why why we want to do business with them. When you frame the purpose, you take the lead, and you take the lead without being pushy, right? It sets expectations, and it positions you as a peer and not a vendor. And that's kind of a mindset thing too. When you're talking to a prospect, they don't want to be pitched. They don't want to talk to a vendor, another vendor. They talk to vendors all day long. They want to know, why are you calling? What is the purpose? And what do you know? What do you think you know about me? So really, it's just, setting yourself as someone who can relate to them. A few months ago, I was brought in to support a growing manufacturing company. And the president said to me, "Alison, our sales conversations are not landing. And we've got great products, we've got great sales reps, but the deals are stalling. And I think it's all about, the conversation and that first kind of meeting. So I sat in on a few calls with the reps, and what I saw wasn't a lack of knowledge or effort, it was a lack of connection. And the reps, they were jumping right into kind of the value proposition. Sometimes they jumped right into pricing, and they skipped over what mattered most to the prospect. And that was, understanding what the customer actually wanted, what they were struggling with. Um, and after one call, I asked one of the reps, what do you think the customer, or why do you think the customer didn't move forward? And he said, I think they just don't have the budget. And, but the reality is, I don't think that they felt heard. And that was a big, and I'll talk about that when we get to objections. Budget is it's an easy thing for people to say, I don't have the budget. But if they're not feeling heard, if they're not feeling a connection with you, budget's going to be their go-to. I don't have the budget, so we're done. Anyway, and that's kind of the heart of this workshop is to, we're not here to memorize scripts or force outcomes. We want to really master the art of meaningful conversation, and that's what it's about. Sales really is about relationships. It's not about selling. It is about relationships, and relationships that are built on trust and that uncover real needs and open door to a longer term partnership. So then, we have to establish rapport. And when you establish rapport, you need to be transparent and human. You need to be relatable. And so here it's always good to tell a quick, relevant story. I think storytelling is one of the things that people love. When you can tell a story about something that you've done in the past for someone else, a story about a past customer, a story about a past job you had, another life, whatever, it builds trust. So something that they'll relate to. I work mostly in the manufacturing industry, and so I going back to the research part, I subscribe to all manufacturing magazines. I subscribe to all the digital magazines I can get my hands on in terms of manufacturing. I want to know everything about the industry. I want to know what the challenges are. I want to know, why certain manufacturers are doing certain things. I want to know everything about the manufacturing industry so that I can relate to them. But storytelling, if you have a story to tell, it's a powerful way to build trust and make your message memorable. Sharing a quick anecdote and about a challenge that you've helped somebody with, and that can humanize you and build your credibility. I will tell you a quick story about. I had a customer or a client that didn't want to invest in a CRM system for their business. It was a growing business. It's something that I come across a lot in small businesses. They don't want to invest. They don't want to, they don't want to do the spend, but they don't see the value, and that's the problem. They don't really see the value. And so I told this client about another client that I did, convince them to invest in a CRM system, and what the outcome was. It was a client who was, again, very hesitant about investing, and their sales reps were working off of spreadsheets. And the president, the owner of the company, was constantly asking for reports, asking for forecasts, asking for, everything, updates, asking for updates. So he was spending a lot of time calling the reps, having meetings with the reps, and the reps were spending a lot of time updating spreadsheets. And, it's when you're in sales, it's a lot to do that. Chasing for answers and not a lot of selling. Anyway, when we sat down to talk, I didn't start, with a pitch. I started with, tell me what is, tell me why your reps, or tell me what's taking up your team's time that shouldn't be taking up their time. And when I asked him that question, that was what he said. All of these meetings, reports, calls, forecasts, whatever. And then I told him that I worked with another team in a very similar situation. It was a scrappy, growing business, and information was scattered, and no one had a clear line of sight, especially the president. So we put in a CRM tool that it wasn't just a reporting tool. It became their daily command center, basically. And suddenly the president of the company could log in every day and see what was happening, what the daily sales were, who the top customers were, what the profitability was on those customers, all without calling a rep, having a meeting, and looking at a spreadsheet. And the reps were saving hours a week on spending time doing spreadsheets and talking to the president. And now they were actually spending time talking to customers and building relationships. I can tell you, and I told this client, that within 60 days, they were already seeing the return on their investment because of the time that they gained and the clarity on the business. And that alone was enough to convince this client to at least look at CRM systems with me. And I'm happy to say that he implemented one. So anyway, you can see the shift. It wasn't about the CRM system. It was about the impact that system had on the business. And I wasn't telling them that they should buy something. I was saying that I've been there before. I've been where you are, and I understood his world, and there was a better way. I wanted to show him there was a better way. And so anyway, that did a lot for me. It built rapport with him. All I did was ask a simple question, and it demonstrated my credibility through that relevant experience that I had. And it shifted the focus from cost of doing business to the value of doing business with me, and with and investing in a system. So, long way around of saying tell a quick relevant story. Because it does build a lot of credibility for you. Do I need to stop here? Does anybody want to say anything or add anything?
It's, as you're talking about stories, Paul and I this morning, we've been talking about creating content, like LinkedIn content, and to not be salesy in the content, and the importance of telling a story. Right? He's laughing because I could see the bell, the wheels turning as you're talking. But it's in everything, right? Your experience, the things that you've done with other clients, or things that you've done with, even as a fractional, your work experience translate just as well.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
doesn't always have to be a client story. If you haven't had a client, you can still talk about things you've done and achieved through companies that you've worked for as an employee. And you can say,
Yeah,
I worked with a company, and this is what happened, and this is what we did to fix the problem, and so on and so forth. And people, we remember stories, we relate to stories, and it's important in sales. It's important in creating content for your social media feed. So I'll let you keep going, Alison. Sorry.
No, but it's true. That's a good point, because when I started as a fractional, which wasn't too long ago, I had to, kind of pull from my experience in my corporate life and things that I accomplished in my corporate life in order to tell those relevant stories to potential clients. So yeah, you don't have to have fractional experience to do
Yeah.
that. Okay. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is value-driven questioning, because we need to ask to understand, not to sell. We need to diagnose before we prescribe. And this part is really important. And when I'm coaching sales teams, I I will always stress the importance of asking questions, and value-driven questions, because sales, it's about discovery. We need to find out. We need to ask the questions to discover what our potential client is struggling with and how we can help them. When you ask the right questions, you get the right insights that you need into their world, and then you show them, that you're there to understand and offer solutions. When I coach sales reps, I often tell them to have a list of 8 to 10 really good questions. So, that's part of the preparation, right? When you are going to talk to a client, you've done your research, you know all about them. Um, Make a list of questions. If you have a niche, so my niche is manufacturing, I know that there are certain questions that I can always ask a manufacturer, because I know what goes on the other side of sales, and the operations side and the manufacturing side. So I have a list of questions that I always ask, and they're kind of ingrained in my brain now. But you don't have to ask all 8 to 10 questions. You just need to have them in your back pocket, so that when you're talking to a potential customer, as the conversation moves along, you can ask another question. You've always got another question to ask. So I've always stressed the importance of asking questions and diagnosing before prescribing. Questions diffuse tension, by the way. That's something that I was taught by a mentor of mine. The more questions you ask, the more you diffuse the tension of your client, so that you're not just pitching, you're actually really interested in what is happening in their business and how you can help them. Okay.
I'll interrupt once
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I worked for a company and in the sales department. And one of the things they used to say is, telling ain't selling, asking is.
Right.
So it's asking questions is what leads you to a sale. It's not telling people what you have.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. We're not pitching. We're asking questions.
That's right.
Yeah, and for me, back to your previous slide about the diagnose before prescribing, which is part of what I call my personal navigator kind of mantra, or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
I use that a lot, and because from the perspective of what's important about diagnosing and listening, because it does come down to the listening piece, is well before any sales kind of stuff. It comes down to, when you diagnose and you understand what their issues or problems are and what they want to try to accomplish, and if you can harden all of that off well before any sales, is then your proposal, your capabilities can then align with what you've heard from them. And so it's not the sales pitch, or not the sales pitch, but the proposal or whatever is just not a bland template. It's, this is what I heard, this is what I can offer. And I think most companies appreciate that.
I think so too, Paul. You're spot on with that. When I do a proposal, the first thing I put into the proposal is, here's what I understand. Here's what I, heard from you. And I list the key things that really are important to them, and then how we're going to go about solving those issues. So yeah, totally agree. Okay. So I have here an interactive exercise, but I thought, instead of, going into pairs, I don't think we really have enough people why don't we just, kind of practice conversation in terms of, opening a conversation. So, I have a scenario there that, there's a manufacturer who wants to grow sales, and we got to open the conversation to make a, so who
Why
wants
don't we
to?
why don't we do this, Allison, for the purpose of um, being practical for each fractional that's on the call, and since we only have I believe three, there's Paul, Dennis, Monica, and that's it, right? I can't see everybody now. Yeah, so Paul, Monica, and Dennis. So why don't we
I think Monica might have
ask
left.
about an industry specific question. So rather than asking the other company that wants to grow
She is.
sales, let's talk about, so Dennis is selling finance solutions. So let's talk about how the kind of relevant questioning he would need.
Right.
Paul and Monica are selling things around IT services. So questions that are relevant to their businesses, and then they at least can walk away with something that means is more relevant to them. Does that sound
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, great idea.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks,
So
Renee.
since Dennis is on the top of my screen, let's start with Dennis.
Okay.
So can we come up with a question that you would ask a company who is looking for or is in need of a CFO, fractional CFO? What questions would you ask them? Are you with me, Dennis?
Yeah. So is that to me? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this would be my normal process of talking to somebody about, and usually we talk about, why they need a fractional CFO.
What if they don't know they need a fractional CFO?
Right.
Right? They've got money problems. They're leaking
Right.
buckets of cash, but they don't know why or where.
So before that, we really were trying to find the source of their financial pain. So first we identify that they have some kind of financial pain, right? And we want them to talk about that and tell us about it, because you're right. They don't necessarily even know what a CFO is, or doesn't know the difference between that and an accounting person, whatever. So it is, what kind of issues are you facing now? And what are the results of those things? So normally I'm trying to do more of the listening, so I'm asking the questions and then waiting for response to be able to then dive deeper into those issues.
Okay, so I'll tell you that I can't be sure, but I can't account for all of the money. I don't know. I don't always know what's coming and going. And we've got an audit coming up with the IRS, and I'm a little bit worried because there are questions I can't answer. Should
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can help me or not.
Yeah. And what's the extent of the issue? So do you have absolutely no idea, or
I've got there are things that I just have questions about, and I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if somebody's embezzling money or if we're just careless about stuff. I've got this bookkeeper, she's my niece, and she's sweet. And she was okay when the business was smaller, but now I think things are getting a little hairy. Just making shit up as I go.
yeah. So what are the things that you have her doing versus those things that you're doing in regard to the financials?
Well, like she cuts all the checks and stuff, and she keeps track of the sales that come in and the pay checks and whatnot. But we got to pay suppliers and we got to order supplies, and she looks after all of that. I've been letting her do an awful lot of stuff, and I haven't really provided a lot of oversight because I trust her implicitly. But To tell you the truth, I think her boyfriend's a drug addict, and I'm not so sure.
Well, there's a little glitch for
Little
you.
hiccup.
There's
Yeah,
a red
that's a-
flag.
How do
That's
we
a
get
red
around
flag.
that conversation? How about something like, are there areas where you feel blind, where the numbers are they aren't telling you the whole story? Are there areas like maybe a
Yes.
question like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then the person can tell you what where or even, I love this question to ask of, I think of it works for everybody. What keeps you up at night? What keeps you up
Yep.
at night financially? Right? I think
Yeah.
that's a great opener as well.
And I think, couldn't you also bring your past experiences? Like Renee, you had asked, or you had said, well, what if they don't know what they know? Or what if they
They
don't
don't know
know
what they
what,
need.
right? Wouldn't you bring your past experiences, whether it's in the corporate world or with past clients that can, in that field, can say, hey, these are my experiences. This is where I've seen other clients struggle, et cetera, or what they were made aware of, so they could at least say, oh, I didn't even know that, and I better check into that. I mean, couldn't you bring that into the conversation
Yes.
so that you look like you've got some value there too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I had a client with a similar problem, and this is what we did.
Yep,
That
yep.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was going to make another point, but I can't remember. So Allison, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's a lot of questions that you can ask. And one thing that I will say is ChatGPT is your friend here. When
Yes.
you are going into a conversation like that and you don't know what questions to ask, or you just want to, kind of expand your list of questions that you want, ask ChatGPT. Hey, I'm a financial CFO going in to meet a client for the first time. What questions should I be asking? And to gain an understanding of what problems need to be solved. If you ask ChatGPT that question, it will give you a list of questions. Some might be relevant, some might not be, but I think it's a great tool to use when you're doing that.
There is a GPT. I sent you the link. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Allison.
Yeah, I use it actually. Yeah.
Did you find it good?
Yeah, it's a sales coach chat
Yeah.
GPT. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can give you guys that link. I can pull that up for you.
Yeah, it's a
Because
good tool.
what you do with that is you're going to set up you're going to make sure that it knows what you do. So give it your website and your any PDFs or one pagers, things like that you have. Give it a customer profile. I'm selling to XYZ company. This is what they do. This is, what I want to sell to them. Pretend you're the company and, help me give me the questions I need to ask, or
Yeah.
let's have a conversation. And you could have the conversation via speaker, so you're not typing everything back and forth. So
Yeah.
you can have a verbal conversation, and it will give you the answers, talk to you as if it's a person, and you can have it make it really tough for you. You can start easy and then have it make it tougher and tougher, so the questions and the objections become a little more difficult, and you've got the right answers. And then when you go into a sales meeting, you'll feel really prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So I'll pull that link up while you guys are talking about other things.
Okay. Are there any other scenarios that we want to
Well, both Paul and I are in or fractional IT, so we can
Oh.
run through that.
okay, great.
Round two, ding ding.
Ding, ding,
Ding.
yeah. There are no prizes, by the way.
We all get a prize for being better.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, it's called a client.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you check your chat box, you'll see that sales coach link. Keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so For IT, what, Monica, maybe you could give me a little background on your fractional practice and what you do in IT.
Sure. Paul, you're still there too, right?
Yep, I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Paul, we can bundle Paul and I together, even though we're working separately, but both of us have technology backgrounds. So we're helping businesses with their technology systems. I realize some of the, like the honing in on the more specifics, but just for the sake of this exercise, I typically start by asking them, similar to your question about what keeps you up at night.
Mhm.
And let's see, I've got a customer questionnaire. So if you could summarize your current technology landscape in one word, what would it be and why? What technology, if any, do you feel is holding your business back? Paul, do you want to step in so
Well,
it's not all
and
me?
yeah, no, and as you were talking there, again, I do also use the, what's keeping you up at night from a technology or security perspective. Um, but then thinking about it from, how do I say this? Clearly, you're having a conversation, right? And, that conversation is finally happening after whatever length of potential engagements, whether it's through LinkedIn or phone call or email, whatever the case is, referral. It's, I still would think there could be a question that says, and I'm going to say this all wrong, but why are we here today? Why are you and I, why are we engaging? What brought me to your table, to your conversation? And let's start there. I don't know if that, I know that doesn't sound right. It sounds kind of whatever, but
Well,
it's something like that.
yeah, so that sounds like somebody's coming to you to
Yep.
engage with you in terms of an IT
Okay.
solution, right? Which is
Ye-
great. When people come to us, it's even better, right? Because they've
Okay.
already established what they need,
Yeah.
what problem they need to
Okay.
solve. So by you asking like what brings you to me, I think that's great. You could also say something like, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities that you want to
Yeah.
focus on in this conversation, and then kind of ask the questions from there.
Yeah, I mean, I have a coach that says stop the salesy terms. And so I'm learning pretty heavily from her. And so those are the kind of things that I don't want to have a conversation, or I don't think we want to have a conversation that says, this is what I do. These are the services I provide.
Exactly.
And I don't, in Monica's script, didn't say that, right? She's trying to figure out why I'm here, right?
Right. Right.
Before any salesies call. But
Yep.
I'm trying to learn from my mentor.
If you
Well,
if you if you back up a little bit, like when someone books a meeting with you, I like to make sure there are pre-qualifying questions in that
Yep.
Calendly meeting. So you're not going in wondering why you're there, right? And you're impressing upon them, you're reminding them of what's important to them. So questions in that pre-qualifying questions, like what's your biggest, those introductory questions can go right into your Calendly invitation. What's the biggest challenge you're having with respect to your IT these days? Just to remind you of what the meeting is about, and it reminds them too. And then when you get into the meeting, you can say, I see that you mentioned that you're challenged with IT. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What's making things complicated for you? How does that really play out, and how is it affecting your business? And that's a way to kind of open up the conversation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alison, because I by no means have your level of expertise in this.
No,
Did she disappear?
no, you're spot on. I mean, that's a really good point, is to ask those questions when somebody books a meeting with you. Your Calendly can do that, or whatever you're using you can do that. You can ask those questions right away. It might just be like 3 quick little questions that you can put
That's
in
all
there.
you
It
need.
gives
Yeah.
you a good understanding of what the call is about. And then you can formulate your questions from there.
And
do a
it
deep
reminds
dive.
them of why the meeting is important as well,
Yeah,
right? They're less likely to blow you off if they have answered those questions because you've put it in the forefront. You've created you've elevated their sense of urgency a little bit more than if
yeah,
it was just Renee and Allison and they don't know why or they don't remember why.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And also, as soon as somebody books a meeting with you, you can, just take 10 minutes and do that research, that deep level research, so that by the time you get on the call, you know what they're looking for, but you also know more about their company and the people than you had if it was just, you're just doing it cold.
And one of the other things, if I may interject, is that sometimes a company might call you and tell you that they've got a particular problem, but that might not be the problem that needs solving first.
Exactly.
So it might be a symptom of a bigger problem. So they think, for example, they've got a turnover problem. But the real problem is they have a leadership problem. They don't have an employee problem. It's a leadership problem or a
Right,
communication problem or
right. Yep,
something like that. And you won't know the full depth of the problem until you ask those questions and you find out how things are playing out. Just like you go to the doctor with a sore shoulder. Is it
yep,
arthritis? Did you dislocate it? Is it nerve pain? Like what's going on? And the doctor asks you 10,000 questions and makes an educated guess and sends you off on your merry way with some prescription or next steps, right?
yep, exactly. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful. I just want to, make sure we're looking at the time. Is there anything
Okay.
else that anybody wants to talk about in terms of asking questions and opening a conversation? Okay. Well, let's move on to objections and talk about how objections are not rejections. I always say that, when you get an objection, it's not a no, it's just a not yet. And it's a, more of a help me understand kind of thing. When you stay calm and you get curious, then you can turn the conversation back toward the opportunity. We need to redirect the customer focus again from the challenge of making a purchase to decision to the challenge of solving the business problem. So when you focus on the relationship versus focusing on making the sale, then you can gain valuable insights into their preferences. I would also say that when you're speaking with a customer and you're especially up against an objection, that your body language says a lot. So your mind might be racing when you come up with against an objection, but if your arms are crossed or you've got tension in your jaw, those kind of speak louder than words. So if always try to focus on your body language, even when your mind is racing. I know it's easier said than done, but anyway. So I've come up with 3 common objections that I personally have faced as a fractional. And the first one is, I'm not sure we need external help. And I think this is a common one because, when you start talking about fractionals in particular, people are like, what? Fractional? I don't need that kind of help. I already have everything I need. And it's a classic, a lot of clients say this until they realize what they're missing. So your strategy when you come across this objection is to empathize. Totally fair. Many leaders feel that way initially, but they found that an outside perspective helped them uncover growth opportunities they hadn't considered. So we're using empathy to kind of gently challenge the assumption that they do not need external help. We want to kind of reframe it. So again, often a fresh set of eyes reveals hidden opportunities. And then lastly, we want to ask a question. Maybe the question is something like, from your viewpoint, what do you think might stand in the way of your company or you moving forward with this? So you want to probe a little bit deeper into why they're saying this and make them, kind of shift their mindset of not needing external help. And then, hopefully that, moves the conversation in a better direction. Anybody have any feedback on this one or experience with this one?
Good. I like the questions. I think that's objection. It's just that they don't understand something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the follow-up questions and figuring out what those questions should be is important, and getting them to that I like that, what would need to happen, because then you're forcing them to provide you with a solution to a problem that's actually
Yeah.
yours now.
Exactly. You're
Right.
reframing. Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I think back, just from my personal experience, like when I am buying something big, because the services that I think most of us are selling are big. It's not like I'm selling a widget. I only need really 2 to 3 clients a year. So it's a big purchase for them. So
Yeah.
I think about like, okay, if I'm going to buy a new car or I'm going to buy a house, something big, right? And I'm just doing my research. Let's put aside some, yeah, there's internet research and all that, but I'm not going to walk into probably the first dealership and buy the car. I want to see what they have on the floor, what promos they're having. I'm going to go to another one, and I might be doing my research and I plan to buy in a month or two, or when my car starts to have more problems. But if somebody's a jerk to me, I'm not going back to them. Versus
That's
if they're like, no, I totally get it. You need to buy when you're ready.
Yeah.
So keep me in mind. Let me know if there's more information. In the meantime, hey, can I send you some? Then I just think about, that's what I want. That's what I trust. So that's what I've been focusing on. I anticipate that this is going to happen. If I anticipate it, then I won't get upset when it happens, because it's very likely it will. And then I can manage it appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Well, the other thing around that is, what can I do to make this easy for you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if in the case of, this is, I'm still doing my research, or I still want to roll this around in my mind. What can I do to make this easy for you? What,
Yeah.
because sometimes the first objection is not the real objection.
Right.
And so it takes a few other objections to get to the real truth. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Alison. Sorry.
Yeah. And you also
Yeah.
might want to do some storytelling here, relate back to something, a client that you had previously that had the same objection.
Yeah.
And, maybe you said, hey, why don't you let me, be a second set of eyes, so I can give you some, at least advise on the challenge that you're facing, and we'll go from there. Because a lot of times sometimes that's all it takes, is to, offer them a little bit of help to, and relate back to a story, right?
Good.
Okay. The next common objection is, we don't have the budget. And we talked about this earlier. And the thing with not having a budget, it's I think it's an objection that a lot of people have, and it's an encompassing objection, right? So I don't want to talk to you, so I don't have the budget. And that's kind of, the standard practice. And so again, we have to acknowledge and, say, I get that, budgets are tight. But this isn't about forcing a budget. This is about showing value. And sometimes a small start, or, a phased approach can shift the conversation from cost to investment. I think here it's really about highlighting the long-term benefits, the shift to the return on investment. You know, I go back to the story about my CRM system, the client that I had. You know, when I shared that story with my other client, that's how I shifted the focus from the budget talk to the value that that CRM system brought in the end. What was the outcome of it? So you can ask questions here too. How do you typically prioritize growth investments? You know, there's a lot of questions you can ask here to probe into a budget. You can also highlight how your service or your product addresses a specific pain point that you know, might help with. Sometimes people, when they don't have the budgets, because they've had a negative experience in the past, or you know, something has happened where they just don't want to engage in the conversation anymore. And then the last thing I would say here also is, you know, show them the dark side of not doing this. Show them the lost opportunity cost. If you know, if you do X, Y, Z, it will take, you know, this many months and you're going to have less profitability. It's going to cost you more. But if you know, if you lay out the lost opportunity, sometimes that also starts the conversation.
Unless they are dead broke, you should be able to show value and a return on investment for what you're doing. People have money miraculously for things that are important to them. I always use the example, and Paul knows this, of the homeless people with tattoos. They'll spend hundreds of dollars on a tattoo. It's more important to them than their meth, you know.
Yeah.
They'll find the money for the iPhone, for the tattoo, for the you know, for things that are important to them, and yet they don't have a place to live, right?
Right.
And so they'll prioritize the tattoo over food or whatever, because for some status symbol or whatever reason. So understanding the why something is important to that, to why your service is important or would be important to them. What's their trigger? What's the thing that would motivate them to buy? And you know, for a CEO, money, right? The return on investment. Are you going to make me money? Are you going to save me money?
Yeah.
Or are you going to create efficiencies for me that will save me money or make me money?
Yep.
You know,
Exactly. Show them the outcome and
yes.
show them the lost opportunity. Yeah. Okay. The last objection I have is we already have someone for that. And, you know, a lot of companies do already have someone for that. A lot of companies that I come across, they already have a VP of sales or a VP of sales and marketing. And so now I have to show the value of bringing me in to help. So, you know, that's great that you have coverage. I'm going to acknowledge that. And then I'm going to probe a little bit and ask how that person that's in that role, how are they approaching the challenges today? How are they approaching, you know, so this is where my knowledge of manufacturing industries comes in. How are they approaching this challenge? Maybe it's a challenge with tariffs, or, you know, something that is affecting their business. And then, you know, really just offering, hey, sometimes I can add value as a second set of eyes, and you know, bring me in and I'll work with your person and offer a set of eyes. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you know, let's try it. And then again, you know, showcase, tell a story, relatable story if you've had that experience before. You could also offer, you know, training, like for the person that's in that role. You could offer some kind of training or support that would, you know, kind of ease you into that situation by showing your experience and your expertise. And that's another way to get around that objection.
Yeah, and it might be just a trust factor, right? Sometimes the path of least resistance is maybe it's just a couple of $1,000s a month for a short period of time, maybe for 3 months, just to see to do a revamp of your sales team, or to whatever, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know we don't have a lot of time. I was just going to ask people to share some of the other objections they might have come across, rather than the, other than the three that I just shared. If you've come across other objections, and how you've handled that, what worked, what didn't work.
Anybody? They're superstars, that's why.
Yeah.
For me, I have focused on maintaining the relationship versus overcoming that exact objective, because I think if they have that objective, they're not going to change their mind in that conversation. So,
Right.
and it also gives me as an introvert time to better, poise, get ready for the more effective response, use Chat GPT, however I need to. So that's, for me, that's been a little bit more of a like positive affirmation. And then,
Yeah.
why don't we connect again? And I mean, I'm not a hard salesperson,
Yeah.
or not a hard sales pitch person. Why don't we connect in a month and see how else I can support you? Make sure, if there's anything any advice I could give, because then I think then people are like, oh, thank you. Yeah, let's chat again. And it
Yeah.
just keeps that door open.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That is so true,
and
Monica. I love
patience.
that. Yeah.
Then the patience.
The patience, right?
I hate that
Which-
part.
Yeah, me too. As a salesperson, I don't have a lot of patience, but I have learned to sit with it.
Yeah, and I think like giving over pitching, right?
Yeah.
Giving value. So if someone, you need to build trust, because people don't buy from people they don't trust. And if you haven't built
That's
it,
right.
no one's going to drop, $100,000 or $50,000 on you, when they have never, you're out of nowhere to them,
Yeah,
right? So you have to
exactly.
establish credibility with them in a lot of different ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, that takes us to the end of the workshop, and I just want to tell you that I really, really appreciate everybody showing up. It's been great, and I've learned from you as well. So I'll just leave you with some key takeaways. If you remember nothing else, be curious, don't be pitchy, do your homework, lead with empathy, show that you've researched, show me you know me, and relevance and rapport. Treat objections as invitations to go deeper. And thank you again for being here today. I'd love to stay connected if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, or
Through the Fractional Referral
or
Network.
through Renee's group.
Yep.
If there's anything that I can help with, or if you just want to run something by, you need a set of ears or something, feel free to reach out anytime. And thanks again.
Thanks so much, Allison. Thanks everybody
you,
for
guys.
coming.
All right,
It's
take
been
care, everybody.
it's a great
Have a great day,
session. Thank you
everybody.
so much.
It was.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.